Welcome back, everybody. I'm still messing with the other Geo here, the one we put the video out yesterday on. So today's video is going to be a kind of a short video. Caught up at the shop here a little early today, so I come down here and start messing with this thing. Figure out this wiring mess that we got going on, and I'm going to flip you around and show you a few things that I found, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I got the bottom dasher part here, and what we had to run power into the car, main power for the fuse box, are two of these super light duty toggle switches that like you buy at AutoZone. These things will melt down and will burn your car down. These are not rated to handle more than about 20 amps, maybe 25. Some of them say 30, but that's really pushed it on a plastic body toggle switch. But both these were sending main power to everything, including our fan, our starter button, and everything. So we got to do something about that mess. And then our main power, now keep in mind this is running every accessory on the car that is powered by the ignition switch, including the cooling fan, the engine computer, fuel pump, radio, heater, literally everything. We got a 30 amp radio fuse holder powering that. Then our starter power trigger wire is a little bitty tiny gauged wire, once again with crimp connectors and push connectors. I gotta fix this stuff. Now, I found a 80 amp radio fuse holder, and for now this is not going to be a permanent fix for this car. I'm just doing something temporary. This has an 80 amp fuse in it, which should be more than sufficient to run the power to everything inside one of these cars. I'm going to solder that in. I've got my little soldering iron down here heating up. Fixing to solder this wire together. I'm going to get rid of all these little push connectors. I'm going to solder everything. And as I checked the push button this morning, it is good. It's just got super bad connections. The screws weren't even tight on the back side of it. So I'm going to fix this toggle switch wiring nightmare on our dash here and fix it correctly to not be fixed correctly. And I'll be back here in just a few minutes. Alright, I'm going to pop back in. I cut one open with one of these connectors because it will actually fit over one of these blades. And I'm still going to use push-on connector for now. But I don't know if you can tell. Look at that crimp. If you're going to use these 10 style connectors right here, make sure you use a good crimping tool. Something like this, which this is a Mac Tools here. I don't think I gave like 30 bucks for this thing. It's awesome. Real good crimper, real good snipper. I'm sure you can get something similar at Harbor Freight for probably 10 or 11 bucks. So if you're going to use cheap connectors like these, at least use good crimpers. Then you have some kind of chance of making a good connection. So, be back here in just a few. Alright, and at this point, even though I don't like this light duty toggle switch, and I'll change this later, this is temporary. I did add a secondary kill switch. It's hidden. I'm not going to show anybody where that's at, but for all intents and purposes here, we now have a car that we have ignition on, and we can start from inside. So, at least now, the car can be started from the inside and is mobile. And as you noticed, I did put some heavier gauge wires, and that they are soldered. We have good connections, even though these blade connectors usually don't give a good connection. They do make a connection, but they are soldered along with the wires. So I'm going to get this stuff mounted back up in the dash and get my other kill switch mounted until I can get a column for his car. And then we'll fix the ignition wire and harness and get rid of this little feller. We're going to run with that for now. I'm going to get it tucked back up in the dash and get this floor cleaned up a little bit. And we'll go from there. But not bad for a couple hours worth of little tinkering here. I think next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to tighten that darn belt up there because it's plain annoying and that fan don't need to run all the time. So we'll go from there. And alright, since we got our car where to start, we're going to go to the next issue. The speedometer didn't work in this car. So since it had transmission in it, I went ahead and pulled the little bullet out here, out of the transmission. I cleaned it up just to make sure the gear was okay. And you can see the gear and the transmission. But if you look down in here, I don't know if y'all can see it quite bright in here, but you can kind of see how on these race spots it's super shiny. It's because they didn't have the speedometer gear. It goes down in here and it literally sits down in that little notch, and that's what turns your speedometer. So what has happened, I guess when they installed the transmission, they ripped it out, this little bullet right here, which is on your cable side, on your sheath side of your car, and this runs inside to the back of your speedometer. They had ripped this off and it was just barely pushed down in there. So what I done, I cleaned this up in here, opened the flare up a little bit where it's crimped, got it back down in there, and I kind of just lightly crimped it back down with some super glue, just to make sure that everything's seated where it's supposed to. So what I'm gonna do before I put it back together, and another problem with these cars is the speedometer sometimes likes to make noise or jump. I'm going to go ahead and lube this cable up here. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of brake cleaner here. I'm going to spray this little cable down real well and wipe it down till it's super clean. And then I'm going to take some graphite lube and I'm going to spray this cable down, and then I'm going to push it back in the sheath into the speedometer. And I'm going to make sure it's seated in here with the clip properly. And then I'm going to put it all back together as an assembly. And what that does is assure you that it is properly seated into your little speedometer gear bullet here. Just another helpful geo trick. So I'm going to do that. And I'll be back when I put it together and I'll show y'all how it all goes together in the car. Alright, I got this reassembled on our cable. The cable's up in there. I don't know if you can hear that, but when you put the cable in, you can literally feel it go into the speedometer. So, knowing this thing had shifting issues, these do have a speed sensor on the back side of the speedometer. So, at least if not, we fixed our speedometer. So you get a clip that holds your little bullet onto the cable. And like I said before, your cable's cramped onto this holder. So if your speedometer don't work, check your basics first, which would be this stuff. And like I said, it's much easier to assemble this out of the car here because you can drop this whole little bullet down in there and get your little 10mm in there. It's just down there on the back side. You can literally look down right beside your little charcoal canister and it is straight down back there. So I'm going to put this thing back together and hopefully I've got a speedometer that works now. Wondering why I'm doing all this other stuff before I actually drive this thing for the first time. Well, let me tell you, a lot of these videos you see where these guys jump in some of this old junk and just take off towards their house. What you don't see behind the scenes in the camera is they're going over stuff and they're checking things. Obviously, you're not going to take an old car that's sat for 30 years and drive it home. Just kind of like a 1994 Geo Metro is set 3 or 4 years or 10 years or however long this thing's actually sat. You're not going to just jump in it and take off because there's problems and stuff like that. So I would rather spend a little extra time, look at a few things, and make sure they're kind of right. So basically, another thing I'd found, we have another little coolant temperature switch down here on the intake. I don't know if you can see it. It's right beside these two little hoses right there. And what it did, they just, the connector was missing, so they just had to wire loop through the little hole in the spade down there. So I took one of our little push-on connectors and I soldered it on our wire here. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to pull the plugs out of it. I'm going to pull the distributor cap off of it and just make sure all that stuff looks good. But I am going to drive this car in this video today. I'm just going to spend a little time just tightening up some loose ends. And we'll see what we got. And maybe fixing the speedometer fixes the transmission not shifting and it is not the TCM like I anticipate it to be. But if it is TCM, I'll fix it too. So obviously just not today. So I'm going to get back to tinkering, and when I find something, I'll pop back in and show y'all. Alright, and I thought this was a good point to kind of pop back in here. I pulled plugs out. It's actually got some brand new spark plugs in, but they were gapped way too wide for one of these motors. I wanted to check the distributor cap, just make sure it wasn't corroded in here. And it looked pretty good, and I hit it with a little Scotch-Brite pad just to be on the safe side. And I've sprayed this out with brake cleaner in here already, inside our distributor. If you have any oil, the big bit of information, misinformation, let me just say that, misinformation that goes around Geo Metro pages and the forums is, if you're leaking oil on this side of the motor, that it's your distributor O-ring that's in here. Well, it is pretty common for those to leak. But the bigger issue is, it's not always that. Inside your distributor here, where your shaft comes out, you have a little seal inside this right here. And this seal is super common to fail. And usually what you see, when you pull your distributor cap off, it'll kind of look orangey yellow in here. That's not normal. That's where your seal's starting to seep. And eventually some cars get so bad that no matter what you do, you put a new O-ring in it, you change your little housing gasket here, and you're still getting oil all down the side of this motor, on top of your transmission down there. What happens is, you get a little vent down here in the bottom of your distributor. Down here, and I don't know if I can actually show you all this. Let me see if I can get this turned. Yeah, you can see it right here. There's a little vent right here, and this vent's to the back side of the distributor. So when this thing starts leaking oil, it runs down right down this little hole. And not only that, if this gets plugged up, and it will over time if it's leaking oil, your car will start misfiring because you're slinging oil around inside your distributor cap, and it's messing your spark up. But if you're leaking oil real bad, and you've done changed the O-ring, you done changed your little housing gasket right here, it's time to put this little bearing seal in here. Which I don't know, like I said, you can almost see it back in there. That little seal is only like $6. And it's not hard to change in here. So, once again, another helpful piece of information. The part number is all over Geo Metro forum. You're not going to find it in the Facebook groups. I have shared it a few times with people that had oil leaks that couldn't get them fixed. But let's help some people out and not, kind of gatekeep this stuff. So I'm going to get the distributor cap back on here, and we'll start this thing and let it run a little bit. Alright, I've been running this thing about 5 minutes so far. We already got a totally different running car than what we had this morning even. So basically, this motor mount over here was in a bind. I loosened it up. I took care of some of the vibration things I heard when I was running it yesterday. Our belt down there is rusty on the pulleys. It'll eventually flatten down. The belt is very tight on this thing. It should not be squealing. Basically, I cleaned this other screw cap, checked the gap on the plugs, and re-gapped those. And another thing, if you're having problems with the Geo, you got a little ground back here. I don't know if you can see it down there, but the flashlight is literally shined right on it. That's your main ECM ground. It grounds to your intake right there. It didn't make these things run bad too. Also cleaned it off. But the car's running pretty good. So as soon as I can tell if this fan will come on its own, which it should be coming on any second. We're about 3/4 way on the gauge. If it don't come on, I will hook the wire I pulled out back up. But smells clean out the tailpipe. Car's running pretty well. Real surprised for, a few hours worth of work. Seems like we got a pretty decent little car. So, the fan, like I said, it should be coming on any minute. The factory service manual actually says it takes about 20 minutes for these fully warm up actually driving it. So, it's been running about 10. And I know for a fact that the factory cooling fan switch cuts this on about 3/4 way on the gauge. And I would rather give it a chance after checking all our connections here to actually work instead of having it run all the time. So maybe here in just a few minutes we'll give this thing a good little drive. Well, this wasn't how I expected to finish today's video, but I did drive the car and didn't really have no problems. I'm going to shoot a little attempted burnout video after this ending here. So basically, I'm back here at the house, and I come back home and completely forgot about taking the video of driving the new project, and come in here and put my cultus sun marker lights and my headlights and my bezels and stuff in Project Phoenix. So this video is not about this car, so I'm going to stop right here and pretty much tell you why that I didn't and I forgot. But I am going to do a couple other little things, and I'll take y'all along for that drive and a little ride along on that project car. Still, I want to drive it a little bit just so I can decide what I'm doing with it. So basically, that's going to be it. 500 subscribers. I will do some kind of cool, collectible giveaway. Also need 500 subscribers to take Project Phoenix here to the No Name Nationals, and I'm going to drive this car. So make sure you get your friends to subscribe and watch a few videos. Help me out a little bit. And at 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to give something even bigger and cooler away, and it is going to be another sort of collectible item. Definitely automotive related, because that's what I do. So until then, I'll see you tomorrow.